This is a JTP Audio podcast.
Hello and welcome to Flight in a Pint. My name is Jason Portizo.
I'm Walter Wilson.
Today we are at Flying Fish Brewery in where exactly are we, Walter?
I'm sorry, I don't know what the actual town is.
We're in Pennsauken, right? Is it Pennsauken?
No, you're close. We're in Somerdale, New Jersey.
Somerdale.
It's a real bustling metropolis here. So as you notice coming in,
What I meant to say was we're here at Flying Fish Brewery in a town whose name I already forgot, and you just told it to me.
Somerdale, New Jersey.
Somerdale, New Jersey,
There it
near
is.
Pennsauken, apparently. Nailing it. We're killing this podcast thing. Walter, we're doing great.
We are.
Proud of you, Walter. All right. I got Kirk Lavecchia here, who's the director of sales at Flying Fish. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on here, chatting, and of course we're drinking beers. So
yeah.
Right.
could be worse.
Dude, thanks for taking some time out to be on the show.
Yeah, no worries.
And you know, giving us some space to set up and everything. And this is cool. Actually, we were here a few weeks ago, maybe about a month or so ago, just before the was it the pickle beer that?
Yeah, we were looking forward to, what was it, a pickle goza?
It was Breinstein, and it was not a pickle goza. We actually decided to go a little bit of a different route because traditionally people, when they want to put pickle or brine, you think vinegary, so you automatically go to that sour space. We actually did it on an American wheat base, so it was really clean and
wow.
more like crackery, bready, but it did have, actually to me, the largest paramount flavor was not really acidity or vinegar. It was more so this big garlic, because it's Elsie's Pickles, who is the person that we collaborated with. They gave us gallons and gallons of pickle brine, and we ended up putting a ton of it in the actual beer. So like 1/10 of the beer was actually pickle brine.
Nice.
So yeah, you could really taste it
we were
coming
here
out of there.
about
But yeah.
2 days too early for it, and we didn't quite catch it. But we had some other stuff instead, and it was really had a great time. Even just sitting out in the beer garden that we have here.
Yeah, it's unique that you guys are actually sitting indoors because since COVID, we haven't had the opportunity to have customers actually hosted within our tasting room,
Right.
even though it's really nice and large and scaled, obviously due to capacity constraints and whatnot, due to the state legislation. And then, it actually gave us a great opportunity to expand our beer garden outside, which traditionally is only that little tiny gravel square pit. And then we added all these socially distant circles. And I come here on a Saturday, and we just strung up lights outside, so it kind of extends our time period as daylight hours are decreasing. And it's jammed here on the weekends. I live closer than anybody else to the brewery. I'm only about like a mile and a half away. And I go to the Walmart that's right next to us all the time. So I drive by the brewery over the weekends too as well. And we have a really nice crowd. I think the way that we manage the safety of the beer garden itself, like you order everything through an app and you just pick up your beer yourself, and you wear your mask anytime you're not at your table, but it seems to flow really well and not make people feel like awkward, but it's still inviting, even though COVID has made everything strange. Is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it was pretty unobtrusive.
You're right, exactly.
You
That's a good way.
got your line painted on the ground, and when you're inside the line, you can take your mask off and like a free man, like the before times.
Yeah, it's super weird. Have you guys gone to a restaurant yet?
No.
Not as sit down. I take out pretty often, but
I went to a sit-down restaurant with my wife when they opened up. It's weird.
Oh, yeah.
It's just such a different experience.
I don't want to yet. I'm not there yet.
Yeah. We were doing it in an outside space, so we felt comfortable in terms of safety-wise, but it just is such a weird thing. It's so different, and I know we'll get back to some sort of normalcy, but in the interim right now, I mean, we've been fortunate. Our weather's been really nice. And I know this is airing a couple weeks later, so the weather's cooling off, and we're actually going to be, the space that we're talking about right now, which is not open to the public, will be open to the public by then.
Good. This is a really great space too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's driven mainly by capacity, but also the way that we're going to distance ourselves. And then the other thing that you guys are actually seeing here that you're, what was the term for it? Because it's not vlogging, it's not podcasting, it's vodding.
Vodcasting.
Vodcasting. So
Video podcasting.
Right. So our video podcasting that we're doing here, you actually, the camera's not turned here, but we're utilizing our tasting room and have been since March to pack variety packs. Normally we do them externally, and we utilize the Arc which is a great organization to do our variety packs. This is all done by hand. So since the shutdown, and their company shut down as well when COVID and the pandemic hit, we've been utilizing the tasting room as basically a production floor. So for us to be able to pack all of the variety pack and for a substantial amount of hours every single week, every single one of us is out here packing variety packs. So it's nice that everything, like in terms of velocity and sales, the colder months, you sell a little bit less beer, and actually the ARC is reopening. So it's like good convergence of timing where we can move all these variety packs outward and bring people back in. So it just works out well.
I love a good variety pack, and like you say, we can't see it on the cameras right now, but we are going to walk around and take a bunch of pictures. So anything that we're talking about now, and some other things that we just kind of like these barrels that we have over here. There's a lot of cool stuff that we saw walking around. We're going to put pictures of all of that stuff on our Instagram. That's going to be at Flight in a Pint, so you can go follow us there.
And we'll reshare it as well, help you guys grow your audience. We're all about that.
Why,
We
thank
appreciate that.
No worries.
Before COVID, I came here, and I really liked how comfortable it felt in here. Unfortunately, it's not that comfortable right now, but I'm hoping soon that we get back to that, because it was a great place to come in, just relax and enjoy a beer.
Yeah, it's funny. Prior to working here as our director of sales, I worked at a beer wholesaler, and we were a competing wholesaler. We actually didn't carry Flying Fish as a brand. Eventually, we did end up purchasing the rights for Flying Fish, but previously to that, and remember, I live only a mile and a half away, I never came here because it was a competing brand. So I always was like, yeah, that's probably a cool place to drink. I'll never go there and drink. And then we purchased the brand rights for Flying Fish at Kramer Beverage, and I came into the space and was like, man, this really is a cool spot to have a beer. And we have a lot of regulars too that utilize us as just their local watering hole. Like this is their bar, they have seats here every single, the particular days of the week that they come here. So it's awesome that it can be inviting. And the other thing that is wild to me is that, when you're a parent, you can bring your kids to a brewery and not look like a degenerate versus like where if you bring your kids to a bar. And I just love the fact that it's very welcoming and inviting for that atmosphere. And you have a lot of birthday parties, a lot of christenings, all those kind of events take place here. And it is a little bit of a down note that we haven't had that opportunity to share as many of those great events externally, because really the indoor space really allows for that better. But by this point, we would have opened up, so it's exciting that we get to reintroduce people back into our house, because a lot of has changed for us both externally and internally, and there's a lot of new beers too. So
Nice.
Speaking of beers, why don't we talk about the first beer on the flight?
Let's get into the
I love
flight.
it. See, you might not have known, but I was trying to transition us, right? So, because. All right, so we do have, for the Flight in a Pint, I decided to select some of our highest velocity products, but also just brands that I think resonate our portfolio and the differences, because we're actually sneakily coming up on our 25th anniversary. So in 2021, the brewery itself would have been in existence for 25 years.
Nice.
And although it's not cool in the beer world to be old, we have grown with the times. And the biggest part of that is looking internally at our portfolio and the decisions for our customers and looking for what they're asking and providing the types of beer styles. So the first one that we're going to have is our Salt and Sea. It's a session sour. So it's a little bit lower on the ABV, 4.2, but it has strawberry and lime in it. And this brand itself has grown legs into its own variety 15-pack in the summertime, where we do not only the strawberry and lime is in there, there's also a blackberry kiwi, and I can't believe I'm blanking right now, and then a mango pineapple as well. So, yeah, but and when we say the term session sour, because a lot of people, when they hear sour, they automatically think of like Warheads or Sour Patch Kids, like real puckering, like at the back of your
Right.
jaw. Session sour to us is we want it to be tart and snappy, to be refreshing, but not overpowering where you wouldn't want to have more. So we found that actually a lot of people who, people who are not traditionally beer drinkers, really find these fruity flavors really refreshing in the summertime.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great smell too.
Sours are one of my favorite styles.
Same.
And I actually had another version of the Salt and Sea last time we were here, and I think it was the pineapple mango.
Yeah.
Both of them that I've had are delicious.
Oh yeah, I did have that.
Yep.
That was on my list.
Yeah, I do. Salton Sea is the beer I drink the most here. I like that its ABV is low. That means I'm like the Lay's potato chip drinker where I can't just have one. I need to have more beer. So to me, the ABV needs to be at a reasonable level where, it's like some of these IPAs. I like IPAs, but sometimes they can be really taxing on the palate, number one. So you just get palate fatigue really quick and you can't even taste any of the other beers if you're sampling something afterwards. So even systematically where I laid out our flight ramps up in terms of flavors as well. Okay. So we're going to jump around a little bit.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to a thing that you mentioned about, a brewery being old. I kind of remember one of my first craft beers being a Flying Fish beer. It was only, less than 20 years ago, but I remember fondly like, wow, this is much different than I've ever had before. So having a brewery be old is kind of like more familiar thing to me. It's almost like part of my life and part of my family.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing that experience in the sense that you have a long legacy with this brand. And in fact, when I came on board in 2018 to work with sales and marketing, it excited me because we have such great legacy and brand equity in the name. Everyone knows Flying Fish in the tri-state area. It's just a well-recognized brand. I just felt that we could evolve and develop not only the look of the brand and the feel of the brand, but then also the actual styles that we were offering. Because if you looked at our styles previous to 2018, and we really hadn't created a new brand or style for over 7 years as a core brand, our flavors really resonated more with English and with Belgian, which English and Belgian in the 90s were the hot thing. That was like, if you wanted to go to a good beer bar, you were either going to a German or an Irish pub. Like craft breweries were just starting to get their legs in the 90s. Like we share actually that 25th anniversary with a lot of really large brands. Victory, Dogfish Head, all started around the same time period of us. So it's kind of unique and interesting that we all share that same perspective, but we kind of all grew and developed externally from each other because we were all going through the paces at the same time. But yeah.
We'll let Walter finish his number one there.
Yeah. What'd you think of Salton Sea?
I like it. And actually, I'd be interested in trying out the multi-pack next time it comes around if it does. I really like the idea of having multiple options in like a style. Like, so yeah, maybe I like strawberry today, but maybe I'm not going to like that strawberry flavor a little bit down the line. Maybe I'd like another option. So
yeah, you know what? I think that's what adds that level of drinkability to Salton Sea is that with the additional variants and flavors, if you ever get bored, if there is a way to be bored of a beer, this became our poolside beer the entire summertime where, it'd be like, oh, I just had a strawberry. Give me a pineapple or give me a blackberry. Blackberry kiwi with my in-laws, that was like their favorite. So like anytime we had overstock of that particular style and it didn't line up with the variety we were packing, I was buying like a case straight of that because they love that flavor. But yeah, I agree with you. And even to push it a step further, the current core variety that's out now is more of a cool weather variety. And we took that base beer, that session sour, and turned it into a cranberry and lime sour. So that's called Salton Ski. Play on words for the wintertime. And I think that cranberry flavor, especially here indigenous to New Jersey, is cranberries and cranberry bogs. This is that like harvest time period here in October. I know this is airing later, but it's cool that we can take a great base beer, which is that session sour, and then just fruit it differently, and it can go so many different directions.
Definitely looking forward to cranberry.
A lot of Jersey breweries, really lean into the cranberry flavor, and we have all the cranberry bogs here. People who are listening out from outside of New Jersey, and no one does cranberries like New Jersey, and no one does cranberry beers like New Jersey breweries.
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right, so what do we have in the number 2 spot on the
All right, number 2 spot, we're actually going to go way off to the wing, and we're going to grab the seltzer because I think that would blend itself a little bit better. We're going fruit again, and this is actually probably our most popular is our blueberry and peach.
I'm moving it to the number 2 slot just for spite.
Yeah, no worries. So seltzer is unique in a lot of ways. It took us over a year and a half to develop a really good, clean base for a seltzer. This is completely made out of cane sugar, and the one thing that you notice about it because you can see it on camera. This thing is perfectly clear, which is not usually typical of craft seltzers. They usually have like a yellowish tinge. So there's a couple of different things in terms of what we do process-wise to really filter this thing down so that it's a really blank base. It's really weird to just ferment sugar, and it naturally would have like an appleish or like a green underripe apple flavor. So to make that more of a blank canvas, it requires a couple of extra steps, and it's unique to us because it doesn't follow the exact same brewing process of like milling, mashing, lautering, boiling. It's just you throw sugar in water, you boil it so it's sterile, and then boom, you're done. Like it's like, but it's a weird process. So like there's things that happen more in post fermentation than you wouldn't normally think. But this one is our blueberry and peach. It's called Simple, and we sell it in 15 packs. So.
It's a good reminder if you're listening to the audio only podcast, either on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Google Podcast, or Stitcher, really anywhere else. Go find us on YouTube. You can find all the links to everything at flightinapintpodcast.com. Go check us out on YouTube after you hit subscribe, and then go hit subscribe again on YouTube. But you can kind of get a good look at the. I was going to say at the color, but at the complete lack of color. That is completely transparent. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's something that consumers really look for when they're looking for seltzers. It's so unique to me, and I think actually seltzers are driving flavor preferences into the beer space as well. I think that's why Salton Sea does so well, because it's lighter, it's a little bit more effervescent, it's fruitier. So all those things play into why I think seltzers go really well, because like nobody wants to be like bogged down, and they want to be perceived healthier, or as we call in the beer space, it's the better for you category. And you're like, I don't know if it's really better if you're having 12 of them on a Saturday, but at least your ABV is lower and your calories are lower. It's all those things that you're looking for. And then this one, what's unique about it is a lot of the seltzers just go for a straight lime or a straight black cherry, those kind of flavors. These are all flavor combos. So blueberry peach, there's a mango kiwi, and then there's a pomegranate lime. So
that's great.
This is actually the closest to an actual seltzer that I've ever had, of flavor-wise, in a hard seltzer. Usually there's maybe like a grape overtone, almost like moonshine. Sometimes there's like a champagne flavor.
Or something like very artificial,
right?
Like
this
tasting,
super crisp and clean, and you definitely get the mix of flavor in there too.
Well, thank you. This kind of tastes like the San Pellegrino I had on the way over.
Well, listen, that's probably the greatest compliment that we could get on it, because it's so far removed from beer seltzer that you want it to be as little tasting as alcohol. It's almost like the best vodkas in the world are ones that don't taste like anything; they taste like water. I know that sounds so strange, but like most people don't want to taste that actual flavor. And the same thing happens with seltzers. You really don't want to taste that base. You want to have the flavor shine, but not be overpowering, because that was another thing, is like trying to figure out how much of each individual natural flavoring do you put in to get the right balance. It took us a long time to figure that out, and we think we've created something that's super, super drinkable, and I think you guys agree.
Yeah, definitely drinkable.
Speaking of flavors, what would you say is your favorite food and beer pairing?
I love a pale ale with a big juicy burger. So anytime that you can have like, I guess that could transition us into, we can try our XPA, which would be the next one on your board. But I love the fact that, meat and like the texture, and also to me, I will just say this straight up, beer is better with food indefinitely. Mm-hmm. So like if folks who are like really into wine, the challenge with wine is you can't mirror flavors or match flavors perfectly, where with even crazily for the beer concept or meat concept, we have a pork roll porter. A pork roll porter.
Go on.
So it actually legitimately, when we first started making that, it had fried pork roll in it, right? Which
Go on.
It's so crazy, right? So like where we're not incumbent by ingredients and we can utilize any of them, we can match flavors perfectly. Where if you wanted to, like there's complement, cut, contrast, you can do all those kind of things, and beer has more effervescence, so it can scrub any of that like rich fatty foods off your tongue. Like there's so many reasons why beer is better than wine, and I just think like a pale ale, which is classic, and to me, the very first like really great quintessential pale ale was Sierra Nevada. I still love that beer, and as a previous home brewer, rather than buying like yeast, I would just buy Sierra Nevada because they would bottle condition, and then you could swirl the bottoms and propagate the yeast out of it. So rather than spending like $6 on yeast, you could spend $8 on a 6-pack and get the yeast. So it was like a win-win on on reusing.
Little homebrew hack here.
Yeah. So, but that's probably my favorite is like a big burger and an awesome pale ale.
Nice.
That's my favorite
Yeah.
for sure. There's some really good ones that you would never think of, like really, really big barley wines and cheesecake. It's the strangest combination when you think about it, because like barley wine is 10% or higher, super fusely alcohol, and has that richness and depth in terms of like unfermentable sugars, because there's just so much sugar to start with that doesn't get fermented out. And then cheesecake has that like creamy richness, and the alcohol can just cut that big fat component of the cheesecake. And that's one of the first times where I was like, wow, beer just pairs so well with certain foods.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to keep that pairing in mind and try it out.
It's such a weird one, and it's not normal or regular to have those two things in combination, but it was one of those. I remember sitting in some sort of course learning about beer and pairings and just going, yeah. Yep, this is it. This is like probably one of the best moments you can get.
Yeah, when you can get like a dessert beer, like actually with dessert.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've had like I've had a bunch of like chocolate porters and like really like rich like raspberry type of stuff, and but it's usually just just drinking the beer at the brewery. There's usually not like also a slice of cheesecake next to me.
Yeah, what's interesting too about like when you think about like fruit beers and chocolate is most people think that they're complementary. They're actually contrasting flavors, because the fruit is really sweet, and usually the chocolate flavors are more bitter
Right.
and a little darker and roastier. So they actually are contrasting flavors, but the contrast creates a really unique layering effect on your palate. So yeah,
I think it's because most Americans are used to chocolate instantly implying that it's milk chocolate.
Right, or being sweet.
that's
so,
true.
So,
yeah.
so it's not just the bitter chocolate flavor that most Europeans might be used to, but we're used to throwing in the milk and the sugar and all the other garbage to turn it into a Hershey bar.
Yeah,
And
well, I
that's
mean,
what-
we're so close to Hershey, Pennsylvania
Yeah,
from here.
maybe
You know,
an
it's
hour?
like
Yeah.
it's a little bit more than that, but like still, it's everyone around here grew up having either like Hershey Kisses or any of the Hershey products. So it's and they're very unique on their chocolate flavor. Just a side note, and I know this is like totally random, but Hershey actually uses sour milk when they make their milk chocolate. So if you've never noticed it, on the back end of a chocolate bar from them, it almost has, this is going to sound super gross, and I apologize. It has almost like a baby vomit, like just a tinge of it in the back, and it's that sour note from the sour milk portion that they add in the back, but it just adds like this unique layering. It's a very small component, but once you have it in your head, you're gonna pick it out the next time you have a Hershey bar. They're 88 cents. Go to
was gonna
Walmart,
say,
grab one,
you know we're gonna stop
and
for
now,
a moment.
and now you're gonna have to try one and be like, dude, that is got sour milk in it. That's super weird.
And then as a control group, we need to think of baby vomit.
Well, there's a big off flavor that you can sometimes get from certain types of yeasts and the conditions of when you're fermenting, and that's like a huge no-no. But in the chocolate, it's become a part of their process, and really it stemmed from the cooling that they had out there in Pennsylvania. So like a lot of that milk, they were utilizing.
Yeah.
The more you know. Yeah. We don't just talk about beer here at Flying Fish. We talk about weird things like sour milk and chocolate.
And how to perfectly get that baby vomit taste.
All right, so let's get the baby vomit taste out of our mouth, and let's try this next beer.
Yeah,
Number 3, what do we got? Number 3.
So we were talking about pale ales. I think pale ales are probably the best with every type of food. It's like it's the guaranteed go-to. You'll never be wrong in saying like grab a pale ale with X food. It always works because they're well balanced with malt. They're well balanced with hops typically. And in this case, and we're actually going to try two different. We're going to do a pale ale, and then to me, I think our English IPA, which is coming next, resonates also with some of the more like maltier pale ales that you can get. So I think that'll create a really cool contrast. So this is our XPA, or what we used to call our Extra Pale Ale, which is more English derived. This is a completely walked new version, and this has Citra hops, which just naturally by the name, you know that it's going to be more citrusy forward, and that's where the name comes from. And it's very light. We use uniquely here, and most breweries actually use 2-row barley malt. Our base malt here is German Pilsner, which German Pilsner lends to better stabilization of the head molecules on a beer, but also lends like a crackery note versus like a white bread crust note. So white bread crust would be 2-row barley malt, and more like crackery, like Ritz cracker without the butter, like saltine-ish without the salt note from the German Pilsner. And I just think it really shines because it's like this really, really clean tasting IPA with that citrus note.
Yeah, I do agree. I like how the Pilsner malt works with the Citra. A very good flavor combination.
Yeah, and you know what's so funny? I'll give you like a peek under the tent, because German Pilsner malt is actually more expensive than 2-row, but we just got in really good because we started in 1996 with our malt providers that we were buying more German Pilsner than other ones because we were making more German, more English, more Belgian-style beers, that it worked better as a base than American 2-row. And we've just gotten a really good pricing schedule for it, and it's increased in price for everyone else, and we've kind of maintained, and it's a great base malt that nobody utilizes in America. It's like a sneaky thing that we use, and it's great. I love it.
Delicious.
Yeah. It's just a really, really well-made, easy beer. I think one thing that we've really been cognizant of is the finish of our beers. Now, I actually think XPA has a slightly higher bitterness level than a lot of our beers. Even though it's a pale ale, it technically IBU-wise is less than our IPAs. Like our Hazy Bones is actually our pint that we're sitting next to. And to me, I think that's indicative of when you introduce the hops in the process. And for XPA and a lot of our beers, we do a lot of late edition hops, which just focus mainly on flavor and aroma. And then there's some mid-tier ones that add in that nice bitterness component to it. But it just, there's a little bit of grassiness, and then there's a lot of that citrus, a little bit of almost even like a lemon or an orange zest in there. And then it just finishes really clean, which that clean finish to me, with a little bit of lingering bitterness on XPA, just makes it really nice and drinkable.
So I'm looking at some of the notes that we talked about before the show, and this one's been killing me. So one of my favorite questions to ask people, just to keep things fun while we're planning out the show and things like that, so you kind of get an idea of what we're doing. What is your favorite guy walks into a bar joke, or guy walks into a brewery joke?
All right. So this one is all right. 2 astronauts walk into a bar. They take a look around and they go, "Dude, let's get out of this place. It has no atmosphere."
I deserve that. All right.
Yeah. So, by the way, I also love dad jokes, and you know what? I think a big part of just sales in general and what I do here is just being likable and personable. I think that's important. Just we're selling a really fun product. Why get so granular? Data's a part of it, and thinking about consumer preference, and that's all important. But we sell beer. Yeah. We're not roofing in the summer. This is an intoxicating social liquid that people enjoy as a luxury. Let's treat it like that and have fun with it. So that's the one thing that I love. We're doing right now our annual business process with all our wholesalers. So it's talking about volume and points of distribution, all these very, very granular things that I love throwing rando dad jokes into the mix, even if it just makes me and the 2 other guys from here laugh. It's just because you can get above board really quick in any profession that you do, and why take life seriously when it can be so much more enjoyable? So
the best dad jokes are the ones where you are absolutely dying, and the person you just told the joke to is rolling their eyes through their head.
So, dude, you're looking at 90% of my life and every joke that I have. Some of them are just so good. All right, this is a really stupid one, and it probably doesn't even work on camera or whatever. But
even better.
My daughters are young, right? So they're both in preschool, and they're learning for the first time Spanish. So they're counting in Spanish. So that's kind of fun, right? And they were talking about Spanish, and of course, because it's Halloween time right now, there's pumpkins, and I said to the girls, like, and I don't know if you know Spanish at all, so like this may not play, but I said to the girls, like, what do you call a really large pumpkin? And they go, I don't know, what do you call it? And I said, gordo. Gordo is Spanish for the word fat, and gordo, also spelled as gourd, is amazing. I was the only one laughing, and I laughed for like 6 minutes straight. At my house, it's I am the eye roll captain for sure.
We do have a button that goes womp 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 womp.
I'm not pressing that
But
button.
no,
Dude, is this new radio? Do you want me to put on my radio voice? I can do
I'll
that.
press the stupid button.
But no, I like it because it works. It's a
God, I
double
hate that
joke.
button.
It's a double joke, and I like that. Well, with the dad jokes, I really appreciate them kind of finding their way into the tap room. The cups that you're using right now have little sayings written on them, and they're phenomenal.
Oh, you know what's so funny too about that is, that came internally from the tasting room staff. So like Allie and Aaron and Sarah and everybody else, Alex, all those guys, and just because we're doing, which we normally don't do, we're doing all recycled plastic cups. Normally it's always glassware. We're very eco-conscious here, so they just felt like it was a blank canvas and started writing jokes on it, and it became almost like, it reminded me of like Bazooka Joe comics, where any day that we're slammed and we don't have stacks of cup quotes, people get like viscerally like upset. They're like, I just got just a blank cup. Are you serious? Like, it's almost like Pokemon. Like, you got to catch them all. And honestly, on social, so I manage our social media as well here. The cup quotes, we're getting insane amounts of likes and reshares. Sure. And I just realized that it's right now more than ever with everything going on, pandemic, everything, like just a little levity goes a long way. Not taking ourselves seriously goes a long way. And it adds another level of personality for a brewery where, we don't have people that are necessarily interacting. Like, our beer tenders are going out and leaving beers for people to pick up at our front door, but they're not interacting with customers like they would if they were over the bar, right? So you're losing a little bit of that element, and I love the fact that they came up with this idea that it's become very paramount. And then also, too, it's become important for them to consistently upkeep and make them more relevant. So, like, depending on the time period or what we're releasing, like right now we're releasing, and once again, this has already happened, but it's our Where My Witch Is At, which are 3 different pumpkin beers. So we have Basic Witch, which is just a pumpkin spice ale. Then we have our Sticky Witch, which has maple syrup in it. And then we have our Jittery Witch, which has pumpkin spice coffee in it. So for all the basics out there, it's just fun, but like all the cup quotes are reflective of Halloween and witches right now.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's
and
great.
like little stuff like that is like that's the kind of stuff that the whole reason we do this show in the first place is like, because we can talk about the beer all day, and the beer is going to sell itself. It doesn't. I wish it did. If it did, you wouldn't have a job.
That's true. That is true.
But the beer's going to be the beer, and you can always go. You can go to a liquor store and get the beer.
Yeah.
And but we want to talk about why people come here. Like what is different about the experience coming here versus picking it up in a liquor store or going to the comfort of your own home. And it's stuff like putting the quotes on the cups and and the couches that you would normally.
Yeah, have. I'll be honest with you. There's so many new introductions of new breweries right now that beer has become a commodity. Much like anything else, with the surplus and access for consumers to try new brands. Back in the day when we would have a tap takeover, that was a really special thing at a brewery, or not a brewery, at an on-premise account. So like a bar would have 5 beers on tap, and one was like super, super limited, and you could only get it on draft that night, right? Mm-hmm. Well, now, because every single brewery has super limited stuff all the time, it's commoditized out the specialty, scarcity, limited, rare. That doesn't even exist. Like, you can buy that any day off the shelf. You can go into, when bars really open up fully, it's going to be the same exact thing. There's just access to it that didn't exist 5 years ago, right? Like anytime we had a new product when I was working in the wholesaler, we could sell in 5 cases everywhere. Now, you're lucky if you get a case sold in because people don't know what's going to sell when, because it's a revolving door and it happens so frequently with the amount of offerings. It's never been better as a consumer because of just the amount of choice. However, you're correct in the aspect of, well, how do you develop a brand? Because that's very different, right? Like, how do you resonate with a brand to want to come back to Flying Fish versus going to any of the other multitudes of options? Within this area, we have at least 5 breweries within a 10-mile radius, which never existed before. You know, back in '96, we were like one of 4,
Yeah.
right? So, like, if you wanted to try,
Jersey alone is up to over 100.
oh, it's over 100, and there was more in planning. I'm sure that some of COVID, tempered those expectations, but it's amazing the amount of brands that exist. And don't get me wrong, beer is amazing. Beer is really fun, but it's become more challenging for access to market for not only us, but a lot of new brands who are trying to come out. But you're right. Building brand is the long-term game. It doesn't happen overnight. It requires a lot of little wins and a lot of little personalities. So, like, even going back to your story regarding that one of your first beers was Flying Fish, and you remember that's like ingrained as a personality trait. Like, you recognize and understand that. Well, that holds a specialty to, like, if we have something interesting that you're into, you'll probably try it. You know, where if we didn't make those little connections, like, for a lot of the younger folks, like, maybe this is the first time that they're ever having craft beer out here, or just even seltzer because they're just not into beer. Well, they could have a great experience with our brand and the fun that we play into it, and then maybe they'll purchase it outside of our walls.
True. All right, let's get to this last beer on this flight here.
How are we doing on time?
We got as much time as you want.
Fair enough.
The episode's as long as it needs to be. Yeah.
Cool. That's I didn't know if you guys had a format, so I love it. Awesome. Okay.
This is we're still pretty early in doing this show, so it is what it is. You know, it's a podcast. There's no rules. It's Wild West, man.
That is, you know what? That is true. And you know what's so amazing to me is that as radio has become more and more just digitized with like a robotic DJ, how many more people have come to podcasting to find their entertainment? I mean, look at Joe Rogan's payout.
Yeah.
Like, who would have ever thought that homeboy who is like stand-up comedian, man show, UFC commentator, the #1 podcast in the world?
And honestly, the only part of that like is a curveball for me is the UFC thing, because, like, you know, going from, you know, stand up to a TV show to a podcast is like the formula now.
Yeah, I mean, Bill
used
Burr's
to be,
is huge.
It used to be like in the '90s, it would be, you know, you're a stand-up comedian, you're successful, you land a sitcom,
Right.
And that was it. And that was
True.
that was what you aspired to. Now it's like you're a stand-up comedian, and like now you want to monetize your podcast, and you do it much more in your own terms. And it's so much cheaper to produce. And if you do it right, you can make more money.
And don't forget OnlyFans. You can always make an OnlyFans account.
It's the oldest profession. It just takes different forms, right?
But podcasting in general is at its peak, right? I don't know about its peak, but it's at its most popular than it ever has been right now.
I'm going to add another layer to that. I think in the future, because we've moved from 10 digits in terms of inputs, like on a computer and a keyboard, we've moved to thumbs only, and a lot more voice is going to be the future. So I think there's a huge longevity for voice and utilizing that space more. I mean, even just look at the reach in general. There's people who started in the middle of a pandemic. They were not excuse driven, so they had a singular focus. Like, there's this one guy that I really like on TikTok, and I know TikTok, like, you're thinking like, oh, it's just dancing. It's not just dancing. There's so much more in there, and the reach is insane.
Yeah, it's
like, you can reach. Some of these people have like 10,000 followers or even less, like 2,000 followers, and their videos reached 1.7 million people.
Yep.
You can't pay for that.
Nope.
Under $1,000 to reach 1.7 million people. Now, digital has changed. Like, it's just a very unique space, and it's exciting. So, like, anybody who, like, for even you guys, this is awesome that you took something that, you know, it could have been a negative. You could have just sat and not worked or not created, and you guys are creative people.
I did. I cried and drank a lot for a couple months. You know?
Yeah, but then you got out of that space and you decided to create something that you're owning. And yeah, sure, like, the audience isn't there yet, but if you keep maintaining, and there's a good book. It's called The Dip, and it talks about essentially like everyone has like a really high intensity and high passion when they first start a passion project, but then like they don't see the results that their perceived expectations should hit in a very short time period. So then they leave as the dip happens, right? Like they get a couple likes, they're excited, and that seems motivating, but then the likes decrease and all that stuff like
I've
that.
been a guitar instructor for 18 years.
Yeah.
And the amount of teenagers that aren't shredding in the first couple of months that stop right after. It's
I think about that all the time when it comes to like motivation. Like, why do people do what they do, and what can push them through? Like, obviously, sound engineering and everything, and just like obviously talking about beer is a big passion project, and that's why this cohesively works. Yeah. But if you maintain it and keep going, and like know that in 10 months, in a year and a half, in 2.5 years, you still might not have that audience, but in 10 years, you now have an audience of like 50,000.
Sure.
But how many people quit?
Right.
You know, I also think about that as the brewery. We were in decline. Like no bars hold. Like we were losing volume year after year until 2019. So we consistently were selling less beer every single year. And what's exciting to me in terms of a challenge and moving and escalating the brand is being able to turn the ship around, right? Like this is a great legacy brand that just needed to focus on the customer needs and solving their problems. And if you do that, then the customers reward you with success and volume gains. And the last 2 years we've had growth, which hasn't happened here in a long time.
Sure.
So like you can either give up and it doesn't exist, or you can keep pushing through with consistency and high value and giving what the audience wants, like not predicating your decisions based on solely what they want, but listening to them actively and integrating that into what your ethos is. Sorry, this is getting super philosophical. I might have to drink more beer.
I was just thinking, like, you can apply what you're talking about
to anything.
You can apply that to literally anything.
Yeah.
This sounds exactly like there's a podcast I listen to, the maker of Poddex. It's called Podcast Therapy, where he's talking about how to build your brand and how to build your brand as a podcast.
Yeah.
And it's like the exact same conversation.
Yeah.
It's like, you find what the audience wants, try a couple of things, and keep at it, and it'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing can be tried and true here. In 2018, we had introduced 2 new brands, which we hadn't created a new brand in over 7 years, Outside IPA and Onshore Lager. We thought because Hot Fish was kind of in decline in terms of a brand, it's more a legacy brand. It's an English-style IPA. It's not as sexy as juicy, haze boy stuff, right? So we were trying to replace that volume loss and build up another brand. Well, that brand just didn't resonate with consumers. So as a result, it failed. But rather than us like kicking the can down the road and seeing like how much we could eke out as it was declining, we just pivoted. The one benefit of myself and our current president, Lou Romano, who came from Oscar Blues, who came from Yingling. So he has a long legacy and a really tried and true lineage in beer. And that's the only reason why I'm here is his mentorship has been fantastic. And truth be told, we have just responded. And since we don't like, when you start a brand or when you start a brewery specifically, like these are your babies, like every single beer that you delete or you retire, that's very emotional, right? Because like that's what you built the place at. But capitalism and consumers don't care about what you built the place on. They want you to solve their problems. So that's what we focus here on is trying to give the customers what they want in the best, most affordable way. And that's what's led us to success over the last 2 years.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Deep, bro.
Hey,
It's them deep
we're
cuts.
getting deep. Well, luckily for us, really the goal of this was just to drink beer and talk to people. And whether we get people following us or not, it's probably something we're going to keep doing.
Yeah, and I think if you maintain that consistency and that focus is still important to both of you, then you'll, even if just your friendship evolves in a better place, and this is an outlet for you, that's still probably beneficial in your regular life and your regular careers.
Drinking beer and setting up microphones is pretty much all I do.
So it's like all you're doing is like potentially monetizing down the line for it, which would be awesome if that happens, So, but most people quit.
Yeah, and like you say, same with beer too. It's you don't get immediate success, and how many of them peter out?
Dude, beer is not fun. I know it seems fun, like the
Drinking
optics.
beer is fun.
Yeah, so like the optics of that, because most people, they do this in their off time, like when they're not working, right? So that's why beer is perceived awesome. Like, what do you do all day? You just hang out and drink. That's awesome, but it's not. It's spreadsheets, it's data, it's communicating to retailers, overcoming objections. Like, there's so many things that go into beer that's not fun about beer. But at the end of the day, if you had a crappy day, you can drink a beer
Sure.
and not get thrown in prison, you know? Or like anytime like you come in here, sometimes at like 8 a.m., there's a panel of people drinking beer. Normally you're like in HR's office. That doesn't happen here, you know? So there are intrinsic benefits of it, but yeah, I think as long as you're following your passion, you know,
Right.
you'll push through the toughness.
Yeah.
And the dip.
And it's fun. It's fun on the way.
Heck yeah.
It should be fun on the way. All right, we've got one more beer on the flight, and then we got to talk about our pint. We cut you off before. We got super deep for a while.
That's how I roll, man.
do
Because I think all this stuff evolves together, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
we're talking about beer, but we're also talking about just, you know, in general, happiness is super important for folks, and
beer is happiness, man.
yeah, it can be. It certainly can be.
What's this in number 4 slot?
So in the 4 slot, we have our Hopfish, which this is a legacy brand for us. It's a more malt-forward, well-balanced English-style IPA. However, we've decided to walk the recipe a lot. And the term walk just means that we've diverted from the past and really influenced it towards the future in terms of flavor perspective and what people are looking and trying to determine what's important to them. So, yeah, Hopfish has gotten a little less earthy and dirty, which was resonant of English-style IPAs, and has gotten much, much cleaner and a little bit even, I would say, fruitier.
It is very delicious.
Yeah.
I mean, I still do taste a little bit of earthiness, but I mean, it's good.
Yeah, it used to be like you were putting peat moss in your mouth. It's not that anymore. And you know,
Well, a little bit's going to be inherent in this style, though. I mean,
yeah, English.
You don't
English,
want it all gone.
Yeah, English style in general, and then also yeast strains. So we've actually changed our house yeast to it used to be Chico, and Chico's really, really clean, California based, and it's called Chico because that's where Sierra Nevada is located, and that's where this yeast strain originated. We've moved to London Fog, which has a lot fruitier esters, and it also leaves residual permahaze in the beer itself. So that's become more of our house yeast. So that already impacts things. And this does go through a centrifuge, so there is some filtration to it. But then we've also changed the hop bill of the brand itself. And yeah, it still has like some of the elements of the olds, but elements of the new. And I think what's exciting for us is that this gets introduced in our cool weather variety core pack. And to me, a lot of folks don't really gravitate towards picking up a Hopfish. So we're going to force people to try it. And as a result, they'll tell us whether they like it or not. But I think it could potentially give a little bit more legs to a brand that has been silently walked but not really communicated effectively. So I think by forcing people to drink it in our 15-pack, they'll have that opportunity to try it in a less biased perspective.
Yeah, I like that idea of adding something new to give something new to try. Maybe outside of their normal drinking wheelhouse or so.
Yeah, and we actually put on the package itself which styles each brand are. So Hazy Bones, that's the haze craze, like exactly what people are, the most popular style of beer. It's our number one selling 6-pack package by its standalone. So it's actually replaced in terms of volume, Hopfish, in terms of its overall volume, and its velocity is increased as well. We've put next to it Hopfish, but we've called out the fact that it's not a hazy IPA, that it's an English IPA, because I think people would, if we just wrote IPA, they might have the perception that it should be closer towards Hazy Bones, and it's not. Mm-hmm. It's not. But I think it leans itself towards cooler weather drinking and can really shine in that realm.
So is there anything that you make besides beer?
We have the seltzer already. What else you got?
Yeah, we do the seltzer. So if we wanted to do something like, let's say, distilling, you have to have a separate license in a separate facility. Same thing with wine. With the only thing I would say that's closer to a different style of product would be our Braggot, which our Braggot is a higher alcohol. It's 15% alcohol, and it's a honey end grain based product with blueberry puree in it. So that's very unique and very different, and it's close to a mead. If you ever heard of a mead is a honey wine. So we do derive a lot of our fermentables from honey. And coincidentally, you would think that the beer would actually taste a lot sweeter, but honey is almost 100% fermentable. Mm-hmm. So as long as you're using, which we use a Belgian yeast strain to ferment that, we don't leave a lot of residual sugar in that beer. So it's a little bit hot when it's fresh, but then once it starts mellowing out, it's like the bang for your buck Corvette of beers. And coincidentally, clearly, if you want to talk about cultural impact and perception, Braggot has had a banner year, which I think because of its price point and because of its ABV and because of people being stuck at home, Braggot has really resonated with how people are feeling. Because Braggot always sneakily sells 30% increase, and this year it's way over that. And I'm sure probably Victory with their Golden Monkey franchise has probably also had a banner year for an older legacy product because it's right priced and it's high ABV and people are going through a lot of challenges and alcohol, good, bad, and different, can ease some of those challenges sometimes. It can exacerbate them too, but.
Well, I can understand because I do find myself drinking more high gravity beers now because I'm not driving somewhere. I'm at home. Well, what's it going to matter?
That's true. Very true. Like without the need to worry about DUIs because you're at home, you're not going out as much. Definitely there's that impact. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Do you find some of like the mead drinking crowd gravitating towards this? Like we were talking before, that not only is our pandemic friendly hobbies are all surging. So things like podcasting are at a high point right now, and also Dungeons and Dragons at its super high point.
Dude,
right now.
that's so dope. Like
Right?
I never played Dungeons and Dragons, but I love everything about it.
I've got cousins in middle school. I got a friend with a freshman in high school, and that crowd is loving D&D right now. It's bigger. It's big now as it was in the 70s.
I have a friend who has a podcast for D&D, and he gets super stoked.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, and he gets super stoked creating campaigns for like his girlfriend's birthday. They'll have like very
awesome.
specific campaigns. And you know what's also, I mean, it's kind of petered off. I don't know if you guys have felt the same exact way. Like when this first started, I actually connected with a lot of friends that I kind of hadn't talked to on a regular basis, either via Zoom calls or Google Hangouts or whatever. And I thought that was awesome. Like, but once again, humans are consistency based, and eventually passion kind of draws out as the pandemic evolved. But I love the fact that so many awesome things and positivity, because I'm like kind of a yin yang person, like all this negativity about, a lot of people have perceptions about the election and perceptions about COVID, and all these things are downers, right? And I just feel like positivity naturally wants to balance itself out. So it's really cool that, and even more so now than ever, you can have a podcast about D&D and be cool and monetize it, or like maybe you create a business where you sell like dungeon master like setups that nobody made before.
Pre-made campaigns are huge.
Yeah,
now.
like any of that stuff where maybe there wasn't that opportunity before, and if you're an entrepreneur and you're super stoked on it, then you could make it happen right now because there hasn't been an opportunity. But a lot of people get caught up in like, oh, this is like the worst year ever. I just want 2020 to end. I'm like, I don't know, man. 2020. If you look at it with a different lens, it might be a great opportunity for you to grow something that you didn't have a shot before, or time for.
My thought on those crossing over is that the first time I ever had mead was at a Renaissance fair, and I'm super outing myself as a geek right now. But,
Ren fairs are cool, dude. I
Ren
like
fairs
it.
are super cool.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta like really loosen up your definition of the word cool, but they're super cool.
Well, I mean, once again, like it's as long as you enjoy it, then it's good.
Anything that makes you happy is
Yeah, that's it, brother.
But things like mead and like really like dark ales are a huge thing over there, and it's got some historical significance to it too. So I was trying to see if there was any kind of crossover between like people who were like discovering D&D and discovering old medieval stuff and discovering their love for mead, maybe coming over and grabbing a bracket.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of that does play in. Now, nobody vocalizes it, so it's not something that I could quantify and say, like, definitely that's occurred.
No one rolls dice to see how much they should pay for it.
Oh, dude, you know what? We were talking about, like, before COVID, I think esports are a huge aspect of our culture moving forward. So we were talking about having, like, Fortnite tournaments and all this stuff in the brewery as, like, part of our functions and events. And I still think they could be successful in the future once things evolve and open up a little bit more. But yeah, we just don't get communicated enough from that crew. That crew is a little bit more insulated and less a little, they're not as extrinsic as other groups are. So you don't see that. Let me talk about something for a hot second, though,
Please.
because you talked about historical stuff. On TikTok, there's a guy who just makes like historical beers or cocktails. And now I didn't see him do this one, but this is just such a cool one. It's called Flip. Have you guys ever heard of Flip?
No.
Okay. So you take an old ale. An old ale is something that's like usually 10% or higher. It's oxidized, which means it has like really high sherry notes to it. It's usually darker and malt based, English style. So it's got that earthiness vibe to it. And people that would typically drink this would be like carriagemen, people who rode like horses and would ride with their folks, and it typically was more popular in the colder months. And Flip was like a meal in a pewter stein. You would take an old ale and then you would crack an egg in it, and then you would add cinnamon and nutmeg to it. Then you would take a hot iron and you would jam it into this thing and stir it. And it would get really frothy. So like think like an egg cream or any of those like crap. What's the name of like there are Flip drinks like
Sounds similar to a Tom and Jerry mix.
yeah. There's God, what's the name of that? It's not like elderberry. It's like a unique fruit that you don't normally see, but it's like called a something Flip. But that uses like egg yolk and frothing to make like an old timey cocktail. And it's the exact same thing, but it's served warm. And I was like, man, that's such a cool thing that's been lost. You know, like people don't really make like beer cocktails, but we have talked about making an experience-based package where you could integrate and layer different beers. So like have like a base beer as one of the offerings and then 3 separate ones that you could layer on top of that beer to make your own version of something.
Interesting.
So yeah, we're going to do that next. Yeah, we're going to do that next year. 2021, we're definitely doing it.
I'm down for it.
What do you got, man? You're looking at questions. I love it.
I was trying to find what kind of berry it was. So we've been kind of, normally we hold the pine up to the end. We've been thirsty this whole time. We've all been kind of
well, you guys haven't been.
Right.
I've drank like almost my whole entire one.
I was trying to save it, but there was a beer in front of me. So that one's your fault. So
well, you know what the beauty is here? You want a dad joke? Like we work at a brewery, we can just make more. You know, like we never run out here. Mm-hmm. So I never get worried about drinking too much because there's always more of it.
Right. All right, so what do we have in our pint?
So we have our most popular standalone brand right here, and it was introduced technically in December of 2019. It is our Hazy Bones. Hazy Bones is a really delicious, hazy, juicy IPA. It's everything that customers are looking for right now and a really good price point at a 6-pack. So you can usually get this around $8.99 to $10.99 depending on the price for a 6-pack, which typically a brand like this in a style like this would be in a 4-pack 16-ounce can format for like $12.99 or $13.99. Mm-hmm. So like you really get a really good value out of it, which creates drinkability and velocity for the brand. So this is our number one selling beer. Technically our best selling package though, however, is still our variety packs because, you know, it's COVID. People don't want to shop necessarily. So they're in for a variety of products, but at a good price point, and it's quick, no-brainer access. So that's why all of our Variety 15 packs are doing really well. Coincidentally, we're also one of only 2 other local Variety 15 packs. So we're kind of playing in a space that, although is really popular with founders, a lot of locals have not figured out how to enter that space, and it's a really lucrative space.
I like the interactivity that you have with the public on this as well. I just noticed that you have different cans based on a coloring contest.
Yeah, so great. Thank you for noticing, because
Walter does his research, man.
We do the work ahead of time so that there's more value during the actual podcast. Our president Lou actually hit me up and was like, dude, we should do like an adult coloring contest. Well, what's really cool and unique about labeling is that it's not late. You don't have to, because you have to register everything with the Fed and with the local TTB. So with the state NJ ABC. But they don't actually care about coloration. You're really doing it for design and what's quoted on there for copy and ABV. So you can change the coloration without having to reapply for labels. So he came up with the idea of like, hey, like adult coloring is a thing. So why don't we degrade and decolorize or desaturate our Hazy Bones, which has a lot of really unique little iterations within it. It's a really unique sugar skull design. So it has a lot of elements that could be interpreted differently by different folks in terms of what color palette they select. And so we ran an adult coloring contest. We had probably about like 60 entries, and we picked some of the best, and we did 3 external and 1 internal winner. And those guys got a couple of cases of beer with their brand specifically, their label, and that beer came out in August in our variety packs. We didn't want to put it out as like a standalone 6-pack because we'd confuse the hell out of consumers. Like, what the hell is this? Why is it a different color? So we forced it into the variety, and yeah, it was really cool to be able to interact with our consumers in a different way and get some folks to have some interpretation on what they thought Hazy Bones should look like. And I think that's really cool to interact with consumers in a different way. Actually, during COVID, we were doing lives every single week on Instagram and taking our back of the house, and I would host them with our production as well as our brewers, and we would answer questions that we would take during the week about a different topic of brewing. And sometimes it would be about a specific beer, sometimes it would be just about styles in general, or how do we even recipe create in general. And it was a really unique way for us to interact with 150 plus people during a live, which, it's pretty cool. And it's something that we weren't doing here anyway. So like COVID gave us that opportunity to look at our social in a different way.
And I think stuff like that, not only the live streaming, but the very fan interactive type of stuff, I think that's going to stick around even once things kind of ease up a little bit. I think people are starting to realize like how important it is to have like a constant back and forth. And an easy access back and forth. And live streaming has been helping that out a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the easy way to sell more of something is to ask your audience, what do you want? Because then you're not like just guessing and shooting in the dark. Now we do, when we take creative risks here with a new brand or a new portfolio option or a new variety pack, it is based and rooted in either data or trends. So we're not insulated, and we're also not necessarily, we're innovators sometimes, but not the majority of the time. We're usually following a trend. So even our Salton Sea is following on the success of Dogfish Head Sea Quench. That paved the path for Salton Sea, a session sour, to even be a thing and be popular. And same thing can be said about seltzer, right? Now, it took us longer than we would have wanted. We ideally would have launched Simple Seltzer in 2019, and it was just 2020 is when we got there based on flavor profile and matching what we actually wanted to release. But we think it's really important to listen to your customer and try to match their expectations with what they're looking for from a brand. If you ignore that, and I'm like a true capitalist by nature in terms of business, if you don't pay attention to your audience and you just ignore them and do what you want to do, that's really cool. That's awesome. But you may not have a brand in the future if they just consistently don't want what you're providing.
Right.
And that stinks. It really does, especially if like you're an artist and you're a creative, but like do that on the side. Don't bring it out to everybody.
There's a line between like, living your own truth and doing things on your own terms, and you have to play a little bit into the broader appeal. Maybe not the broad appeal, but yeah, someone else has to like it other than you.
Well, you're 100% correct. Somebody has to like it other than you. But even us as a brand, Flying Fish, we're not super geeky. We're not nerdy. We'll have releases that are, like the Witches. The Witches are unique. They're different. And they just add conversation. The Breinstein, the pickle beer, it adds conversation. It's just like a little blip in the radar of like, Flying Fish is still doing some stuff, right? Mm-hmm. but we're more of a core demo every day, almost even like an intro level brand. And I don't think that's a negative. We just have a larger demo of people. Like, we don't have to be freaks. We don't have to throw in, like fish livers to be interesting. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's just not our shtick, and that's fine. Like, for the folks that it is that for, just realize that like we have different audiences, and we cater to those audiences.
And I do see that a lot. A lot of your beers are beers that I could see drinking more than one, as opposed to some of the other, more crazy type of beers where it's like, oh, this is great, but I don't think I could have more than one of these.
Yeah, and I got caught up in, I don't know if you guys ever messed with it, but like Untapped, I got caught up in that whole game of like trying to just try, right? So every new thing, every new release, and it gets just exhausting after a while.
Exhausting is the perfect word for it.
Like I think I got to like over 5,000 individual unique check-ins on Untapped, and I just quit. I was just like, this is a job
It becomes
now,
a job.
and
That's
it's not even fun because I'm not even Here's what really happened: is consistently over time, I just didn't enjoy every single because it was new. That's why I tried it. I didn't try it because I thought it was really going to be great, and most times they didn't match up to the flavors of what they were projecting. Like, one of the biggest problems I have in beer is if you're saying like, hey, we're going to make a pumpkin pie beer, and the beer tastes nothing like pumpkin pie, well then to me, perceptionally, you failed. Because I went in expecting this and I got this. And the two differed too much, and it just creates a disappointment, So, and the worst part about it was a lot of these beers were like $6-7 in the off premise. So like at a liquor store as a single, like, I don't know, man, I'd rather just pay $2 more for a 6-pack than get burned on an $8 single.
Right.
And that was happening to me too much and too frequently, and it was cost prohibitive. And I just said, you know what, enough is enough. I want to drink what I enjoy. Now, what's even crazier, and I guess it's indicative of working at a brewery, is I don't drink any other beer except for Flying Fish. But that's just because I exist here. It's easy access, and
It's right there,
and I can
man.
spend my fish bucks on it. So
Nice.
it's like a win-win. And also inherently biased is we make a lot of beers and brands that I like and enjoy because they're popular to most people now anyway. But there's a lot of things that are in our lineup that I don't drink regularly that are still really popular with other folks.
Dude, Kirk, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Yeah,
this was awesome.
guys. This is awesome.
Great beer. I mean, you were fantastic. Excellent conversation. This
had a great time.
This is a good episode. What would you say to people who maybe are familiar with the beer, maybe even not familiar with the beer, but want to come visit? What would you say to draw them in?
Yeah, so what I would say is, like, depending on your level of safety and care and all those things that are important to you, we really pride ourselves on making sure that everyone feels safe, especially during the pandemic, to enjoy themselves. We've created it more contactless, which means that you order everything online and you have your own individualized space, which I think is really important, especially right now. However, the big real reason to try Flying Fish right now is if you haven't had Flying Fish in the last 2 years, you have not had Flying Fish. We only make 3 beers in perpetuity that existed prior to 2018. So really everything is new. And the best way, honestly, to try Flying Fish is to grab one of our core variety packs. It's our #1 selling package by far. And there's not a reason beyond the fact that it's unique, it's different. Right now, when you're hearing this, you're going to have a cool weather month variety pack that's out there with the Salt and Ski, which is a cranberry and lime. That's exclusive to the variety pack. You can't even get that outside of the variety pack. And then there's also another one that's called Raspberry Beeré, which we haven't gotten a cease and desist on, which is good. But but I feel like because we added the extra E in beer, we got away with it. But that's a Belgian style wit with raspberry, and just those. You can only get them in the variety pack. It's really unique and different, and our Hazy Bones is such a good IPA. So I just implore people to try a variety pack, try us out again, especially if you've had like legacy knowledge about the brand. Like, oh, I'd liked Flying Fish, like, when I first started drinking, but you're like captivated by trying all the new, shiny new toys. And like, I totally appreciate that. And we do have a lot of those things coming out in terms of limited basis. try some of the new things. The core variety pack, our seltzer. If you're into seltzer, try the simple seltzer. It is such a clean base seltzer and at a great price in a 15 pack. Like, I mean, I don't know. I drink a lot of those brands because they're just repeat and ease. Like it's not a struggle to drink the beer.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Where can we find more stuff on Flying Fish?
So you can go to our website. That's a great resource. If depending on where you're located, Flying Fish is located in a lot of states outside of our core distribution network, which is 5 states. We're in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, and West Virginia. But if you look at flyingfish.com, you can actually find us in other states like California and Florida because we have a partnership with Total Wine. So for the national audience, if you have a Total Wine that's near you, we have a Brewery Direct program. So you can actually try a lot of these brands outside of our core 5 states. And flyingfish.com has a beer finder, which makes it super easy to find the specific beer that you're looking for from us. And just being full transparency, our Variety 15 packs are our most distributed products, so you will guaranteed at least be able to find those in your local area.
Awesome.
Instagram, Twitter, anything like that?
Yeah, we do. Everything is Flying Fish Brew. So TikTok, Instagram. Instagram is probably our best and more. It's one of our largest and most engaging audiences. And then Facebook and Twitter we have as well. Although nobody uses Twitter anymore. No. We push content to there, but I don't know if anybody's replying.
I don't look at it.
Yeah.
Kirk, once again, thank you so much. We are Flight in a Pint. We're going to take some pictures around here. We're going to get pictures of the variety pack. We're going to get some pictures of the some Hazy Bone stuff. That's all going to be on our Instagram, which is at Flight in a Pint. Find out all of our stuff. If you go to flightinapintpodcast.com, it's nothing but a whole bunch of links, and you can go find us, watch us, listen to us, maybe support us on Patreon, and all those links are going to be there. Kirk, once again, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I cannot wait to edit this episode. My name is Jason Portizo.
I'm Walter Wilson.
This has been Flight in a Pint. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, guys. Cheers.
This has been a JTP Audio podcast. Thanks for listening.